Poor Virginia guy saves drowning California girl. Unexpectedly she is a millionaire's daughter who changes his life forever. The storm that afternoon came without warning. The Atlantic coastline of Virginia was known for its sudden changes in mood, but that day the ocean looked particularly violent, as though some restless spirit had been unleashed in its depths. Gray clouds rolled across the sky, waves crashed with a force that shook the sand, and the salty air carried a chill that seeped through skin and bone. On that shore, barefoot and weary from another long shift at the docks, stood Daniel Carter, a young man who had grown up with the sea as both his friend and his enemy. He was used to fighting for survival, not against storms, but against poverty, loneliness, and a life that had offered him very little. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw that day, a young woman struggling desperately in the roaring waves, her screams for help drowned beneath the crash of the tide. In that single moment, Daniel's life, defined by hardship and invisibility, was about to collide with a destiny he could never have imagined. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of fate, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support means the world and helps us bring more stories like this to life. Daniel's instincts took over before fear could root him to the sand. He plunged into the water, fighting the violent current that seemed determined to swallow the girl whole. Every stroke of his arms burned, every breath was a battle, but he pushed forward. His calloused hands finally grasped her flailing arm, and he pulled her against his chest, whispering words she couldn't hear over the storm. She was limp, exhausted, her eyes rolling back as waves battered them both. With every ounce of strength left in him, Daniel fought the sea, dragging her toward the shore. The ocean tried to claim them, dragging their bodies into its depths, but Daniel's will was stronger. By the time they collapsed on the wet sand, coughing, choking, and trembling, he had saved her life. And in doing so, unknowingly, he had saved his own. The girl's name was Emily Prescott. Her clothes, expensive fabric now soaked and torn, and the elegant gold bracelet still clinging to her wrist hinted at a life far removed from Daniel's world. She was not a local, she had come from California with her family, who were staying at a private resort not far from the coast. Her father was one of the wealthiest real estate tycoons in the country, a man whose name Daniel had only ever heard on television when business news mentioned billion-dollar deals. But none of that mattered to Daniel in that moment. He saw only a frightened young woman, vulnerable, shivering, her long blonde hair tangled with seaweed, and her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and gratitude. For Emily, that day became more than a near-death experience. It became the day her world expanded beyond the golden cage she had been born into. She had grown up in Beverly Hills mansions, private schools, chauffeured cars, and luxurious vacations. But none of that ever made her feel alive, none of it had ever felt real. She had always been surrounded by people who wanted something from her family name, attention, favors, or wealth. But here, on a storm-battered beach in Virginia, she met a man who asked for nothing, who risked his life for her simply because it was the right thing to do. Daniel, however, didn't think much would come from it. He had saved lives before, not from drowning, but from hunger. His younger sister back home relied on him, his sick mother prayed for him daily, and his worn-out boots carried him every morning to hard labor that barely kept the lights on in their small wooden house. He assumed Emily would thank him and then disappear back into her privileged world, leaving him to his endless cycle of exhaustion and survival. He was used to people like her, untouchable, from a different universe entirely. But Emily was different. Days later, Emily returned to find him. She couldn't stop thinking about the boy with tired eyes and strong arms, the one who had breathed life back into her when she thought she was gone. She wanted to thank him, to know him, to understand why someone with nothing had given everything without hesitation. What she discovered shook her. Daniel lived in poverty so stark it made her heart ache. He worked 2 jobs, one at the docks and one at a mechanic's garage, just to scrape together enough for food, rent, and medical bills. His house was falling apart, yet he smiled when he spoke of his family. He carried burdens on his shoulders that would have broken most people, and yet he stood tall, with a quiet dignity money could never buy. As weeks turned into months, Emily kept coming back. She watched him fix engines with grease on his hands, help elderly neighbors carry groceries, and play soccer barefoot with local kids who adored him. She listened to his dreams, how he wanted to study engineering but had given it up when his father died, leaving him as the man of the house. She saw the way he always put others before himself. For the first time in her life, Emily saw what true strength and kindness looked like, and it humbled her. Her father, however, was not pleased. When Emily finally confessed that she had been spending time with the boy from the docks, Richard Prescott was furious. He warned her that people like Daniel only wanted money, that the world was full of opportunists waiting to prey on her innocence. But Emily knew better. She had seen Daniel refuse her offers of help, refuse the envelopes of money she tried to give him. He wanted nothing except to stand on his own 2 feet. That integrity was something her father's billions could never buy. But Daniel's pride became his greatest obstacle. He pushed Emily away more than once, terrified of being pitied, terrified of being the poor boy clinging to the rich girl. He wanted to protect her from the cruel gossip that would surely follow, and he wanted to protect himself from the heartbreak he thought inevitable. Still, fate has a way of tearing down walls. When his mother's illness grew worse and hospital bills piled higher than he could ever pay, Emily stepped in, not with money, but with presence. She was there, holding his hand in the waiting room, whispering that he wasn't alone anymore. Through her, Daniel slowly learned that love is not about pity or charity, but about carrying burdens together. Emily's world and Daniel's world began to merge, not without struggle, but with something deeper than wealth or poverty, trust. She introduced him to her family again, this time not as the boy who saved her, but as the man she loved. Richard Prescott resisted, but even he could not deny the integrity in Daniel's eyes, nor the way his daughter glowed when she was beside him. In time, respect began to replace resistance. Daniel's life changed forever, not because of the money, but because someone finally saw his worth when the world had ignored it. With Emily's support, he went back to school, earned his degree, and built a future where he no longer had to choose between survival and dreams. And Emily, in loving him, found the freedom she had long been searching for, the freedom to live a life not defined by wealth, but by purpose, kindness, and courage. By the end of their journey, Daniel and Emily's story was no longer just about a rescue on a stormy beach. It was about love born from sacrifice, about walls broken by trust, and about 2 souls from opposite worlds finding home in each other. Their love became a testimony that fate sometimes chooses the unlikeliest moments, and the unlikeliest people, to remind us of the power of selflessness. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Royal Stories for more unforgettable journeys of love, faith, and second chances. Your engagement helps us continue spreading these powerful messages. Right finger special request to comment. Tell us in the comments, do you believe fate can bring 2 people from completely different worlds together?